Tony Olvet is from IDC, and he's I gotta read your title because it's long. Group VP of Research with IDC Canada, and he's going to take on the task of doing, wait for this, 5G in 15 minutes, and I calculated that as 3 minutes per G. So take it over.
Thanks, Jim, and welcome everyone. I'm pleased to be here to talk about 5G and cut through some of the hype and potential confusion about the next generation of wireless. And I think it's really important to bring the attention to this because it's such an important part of our industry, and it'll enable digital transformation over the next 10 years or so. So, 5G in 15 minutes, what you need to know about the next generation of wireless. So let's first see what the industry players are saying. What's the hype that's being pushed out there? 5G, it's a revolutionary leap. That's from the Wireless Association in the US. Rogers says it's the most transformative technology offered since wireless services were introduced in 1985. That's pretty significant. And then my favorite, Nokia, 5G is going to change everything, everything. So it's not that I don't think it's important. In fact, it's hugely significant when we talk about changing processes, industrial transformation, and new business models. It's just we need to talk about this with a measured context and understand and set expectations for performance, capability, use cases, and timelines. So hopefully I can get through that in the next 14 minutes. So here's the reality check, setting some expectations for 5G in Canada. First, it's not here today. I know there was a little bit of a test this morning. Rogers asked if anyone had a 5G phone. I don't think anyone raised their hand, so that's good. We passed the test. There aren't really any commercially available 5G phones widespread in Canada. There's a couple out in the US. We may see some phones, but really it's not about phones. It's about a whole bunch of other technology and use cases. So in terms of timelines, what's important, there are a couple of spectrum auctions to take place in Canada, one in 2020 and another one in 2021. And that will set the foundation to allow wireless communications for a variety of use cases around 5G. The second thing is, and this is a little more technical, this really isn't a technical talk, but 5G is not one technology or one thing. It's a new architecture that is a combination of low band, mid band, and high band wireless frequencies that are going to come together to create a multitude of capabilities that are not available right now with 4G LTE. The other good thing is it's an evolution, so we will see LTE and 5G technologies go hand in hand, and we will also continue to see Wi-Fi out in the field and in buildings. So it doesn't replace all of what we already have. So that's a little bit reassuring for people who have invested in technology. So it is an evolutionary move, but it does increase the capabilities beyond what we see today. So that's some of the expectation setting. Let's also look at where we've come from very briefly. So the first generation was in the 80s, and that just really started with analog phones. And the key differentiator there was it allowed us to be mobile while talking on a phone. And now we've come through 2G, 3G, 3.5G, which really progressed to digital capabilities, to more data, to more throughput. And now we're using our phones and mobile devices for lots of high bandwidth applications, video, faster broadband, some lower latency, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, because 5G is going to change all of this more significantly over the longer term. So we have the promises of faster speeds, lower latency, more energy efficient, greater connection density, enhanced mobility, and greater availability. And that, combined with new possibilities around every other technology we've been talking about today, for fundamentally new use cases and potential business models. And that's why some of the industry players, the carriers, the infrastructure companies, and the service providers are so excited about it, because they truly believe that this is going to change business opportunities for everyone in this room. So take a moment to look at this. This is a really useful diagram if you want to spend another minute or so on this notion of different frequencies. This is from Nokia, and it provides just a simple way of looking at what are the different spectrum needs and coverage needs that are provided through the different technologies that are going to be rolled out over the next few years and the auctions through 2021. So below 3 gigs is low frequency, and that's good for coverage and penetration, so longer rural coverage and in through buildings. And if you go higher up to frequencies into what people call millimeter wave, you might have heard that, that is for really fast throughput. So that combination allows for a variety and multitude of different capabilities over the network. So in terms of speed, at the low end, that's about 1 gigabit per second. At that very high end, that's 10 gigs per second. That is massive throughput. Again, we're not here today, but that's going to be happening over the next 2 to 3 years. So this will be baseline coverage. Those low frequency spectrum will be able to build out coverage, and then the millimeter wave will really provide that fast and high throughput. Another term you may hear in a more technical discussion is about network slicing. That is, simply put, to dumb it down and to make it simple for me to understand, is virtualizing the network capabilities so you can have different parts of 5G network serve different purposes. So maybe a video needs very high bandwidth, but if it's a delayed broadcast, latency isn't important. But if you're doing remote surgery, by the way, that is something that people are touting in 5G, low latency is really important. You don't want to have a second delay as you're moving your scalpel across someone's brain, right? So this is a really good reference diagram to say, what are we talking about when we're talking about different wireless frequencies in 5G? So enough of that. And of course, it's going to be faster. That's the big thing that everyone touts at every generational change in wireless communications. But I think there's 3 that I'd really like to highlight that are game changers and change the opportunity and capabilities for a bunch of different operations and applications. Greater connection density, lower latency, and improved energy efficiency through 5G technology. Let's back up one on that one. So the greater connection density. This is something we take for granted unless maybe you're in a very populated concert or at Union Station at 4:30 p.m. where you can't get a connection. We are now maxing out our coverage capabilities in high dense areas with LTE. And so often falling back to 3G, and we know what that's like. With 5G, we're going to see up to 1 million connections per square kilometer. That's an exponential increase from where we are today. So that connection density will be made much more, make for many more connections per cell site. Lower latency, that's the time it takes to transmit a signal from one point to another. Sometimes we take this for granted, but this is, again, really important for applications like remote surgery or other sort of remote drone rescues or augmented reality, those types of things. That will reduce the time to transfer that signal. And think about this in terms that we can all recognize. How long it takes for a driver to react to something on the road. Super important for safety and driving, and it'll also involve autonomous vehicles. The average reaction time is 0.7 seconds for us, and that's 700 milliseconds. 5G's latency will be 1 millisecond. So a massive reduction in terms of latency. And then finally, improved energy efficiency. And again, sometimes this is taken for granted, not by me. You know, mobile computing is very precious. Power is precious for mobile computing. I suffer from power anxiety on my phone, low battery anxiety. If it gets below 40%, I'm running to a charger station or what have you. This is going to change the game for many devices. So low power efficiency, the promise there is a 90% reduction in some cases for what it is needed on the carrier's network, but more importantly for end user organizations, up to 10-year battery life for low power IoT devices. So think about pipeline or weather stations where you might have remote sensors scattered across Canada in very rugged and remote locations. Changing out the battery, that is cost prohibitive. It's a non-starter for many applications. Now think of the possibilities with low power, wide area networks. Some of them are already being rolled out today, not 5G, but other pre-5G technologies, and that's on the roadmap to upgrade to 5G over the next few years. So improved energy efficiency is also a really important promise of 5G. So fundamentally, 5G wireless enables digital transformation and a lot of what we're talking about here today at the conference. My colleague, Jason Lee, on our global team says the speed, latency, and densification advantages of 5Gs really will enable a wide range of applications and transformative applications and services across almost every industry. So everyone says, beyond remote surgery and downloading fast movies, what are some of the use cases? And let's talk about some of the timelines. The first one that we're going to see that will be broadly commercially available is fixed wireless access. Not very sexy, but this is a practical service for branch sites, remote sites. There's already remote backup over LTE. We're just going to see that being offered by the big carriers for businesses in the next generation of networks. And in fact, Terrago already has some of the lower frequency services in their existing service model, and I expect to see them enter that market as well. So fixed wireless access will be kind of like the low-hanging fruit for carriers in the early years, maybe something within the next 12 months. But beyond that, we're talking about 2020, 2021, and at the far end, autonomous vehicles. I don't have a crystal ball on that. That's more of a societal, government, and less than a technology decision. This is really about, are we going to allow self-driving cars ubiquitously in society? I think we're going to start in corridors and then move from there. But before we get to that far end, let's talk about some other use cases. Augmented reality in business is already emerging. AR in field service is one of the first use cases. Caterpillar's dealers for servicing and fixing their equipment, they're already using a AR application from a Canadian developer. And that allows them to overlay plans and designs and look at it in real time through a screen. So imagine that in 5G where you have greater throughput and lower latency, much improved capabilities for augmented reality in business. The connected factory. We've been hearing about that for a number of years after the big push and discussion around Industry 4.0. Many organizations, manufacturers in Canada really need to improve their operational efficiency due to global competition and rising costs and so forth. So they are looking to automate through robotics and connecting those. And we're already seeing implementations. It was Nokia and Ericsson have done implementations, Audi as well, connecting a lot of their equipment in factories with 5G. In fact, China Mobile has 1,000 high-precision screwdrivers that have sensors on it to look at the torque level, and they can adjust it based on the sensors in that network. Allowing that to be connected to 5G will, again, just make it that much more efficient, and we'll see far more applications of sensor technology in the connected factory in the years to come. Video. We're all seeing video everywhere. Ultra-high definition video monitoring and analytics and surveillance is going to be on the horizon. In fact, in New Delhi, India, they are planning to install 280,000 cameras for detecting crime, for crime prevention purposes in the city. So that is a massive load on the network that can't be done in the 4G LTE world. So look for applications around video on 5G. And then finally, autonomous vehicles. We're already seeing semi-autonomous vehicles today. Whether it gets to be ubiquitous in the next 5 to 10 years is anyone's guess, but I expect to see it in corridors first. So we talked about the latency issue, but also there's going to be a lot of data being produced by vehicles, sensors, and being able to understand what's around the corner that they can't see. That will be made possible through 5G, being able to map that and react in real time with that low latency. So those are 5G use cases. Hopefully that gives you some food for thought. Think about some of this in terms of your own business models. How could 5G transform your business or industry, whether it's operational efficiency, serving customers better? And what are your competitors doing? What are some of the competitive disruptions that loom ahead? And I think it's really important to plan for the long term. If you're building a stadium or a factory or a transportation network, that's not next year's budget. That's a 5 to 10 year budget for many large projects. Start thinking about 5G in those projects. And then the technology considerations. We don't all have to be deep into the technology, but follow what announcements are being made. What are the auction results? Who's playing? What newcomers are there? What are the big 3 carriers doing? And start to explore in your own pilots and use those partners for new applications of technology, early trials, pilot projects. Some of the your best partners will be able to test those in a controlled environment and allow you to explore and refine your operations and what's possible for your business in the future. And then think about how 5G also ties into your plans and strategy around IoT, cloud computing, and edge computing, because 5G will enable a lot of that new edge computing because there's data being gathered out in far more remote and disparate locations. So hopefully I passed the test. Jim, that's 5G in 15. Thank you.
So the mark of somebody who really knows their stuff is when they can put it to you simply in a short period of time and take you through and educate you. You guys are smart. You must work for a research firm or something.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
IDC, just a great group of guys in there, and if that's the type of research that you see done here in Canada and brought to you here. So thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Pleasure.